All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another chapter of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Today we're going to read one chapter. Chapter 20 is called The Great Gum Machine. Mr. Wonka led the party over to a gigantic machine that stood in the very center of the inventing room. It was a mountain of gleaming metal that towered high above the children and their parents. Out of the very top of it, there sprouted hundreds and hundreds of thin glass tubes, and the glass tubes all curled downward and came together in a bunch and hung suspended over an enormous round tub as big as a bath. "Here we go," cried Mr. Wonka, and he pressed the 3 different buttons on the side of the machine. A second later, a mighty rumbling sound came from inside it, and the whole machine began to shake most frighteningly, and steam began hissing out of it all over. And then suddenly, the watchers noticed that runny stuff was pouring down the sides of all of the hundreds of little glass tubes and squirting out into the great tub below. And in every single tube, the runny stuff was a different color, so that all the colors of the rainbow, and many other colors as well, came sloshing and splashing into the tub. It was a lovely sight. And when the tub was nearly full, Mr. Wonka pressed another button, and immediately the runny stuff stopped running out of the tubes, and the rumbling sound disappeared, and a whizzing, whirring noise took its place, and then a giant whizzer started whizzing round inside the enormous tub, mixing up all the different colored liquids like an ice cream soda. Gradually, the mixture began to froth. It became frothier and frothier, and it turned from blue to white to green to brown to yellow, and then back to blue again. "Watch," said Mr. Wonka. Click went the machine, and the whizzer stopped whizzing. And now there came a sort of sucking noise, and very quickly all the blue frothy mixture in the huge basin was sucked back into the stomach of the machine. There was quite a moment of silence, and a few strange rumblings were heard, then silence again. Then suddenly, the machine let out a monstrous, mighty groan, and at the same moment, a tiny drawer, no bigger than the drawer in a slot machine, popped out of the side of the machine, and in the drawer there lay something so small and thin and gray that everyone thought it must be a mistake. The thing looked like a little strip of gray cardboard. The children and their parents stared at the little gray strip lying in the drawer. "You mean that's all?" asked Mike TV, disgusted. "That's all," answered Mr. Wonka, gazing proudly at the result. "Don't you know what it is?" There was a pause. Here they are all looking. Can you see? Then, all of a sudden, Violet Beauregard, the goofy, gum-chewing girl, let out a yell of excitement. "By gum, it's gum!" she shrieked. "It's a stick of chewing gum!" "Right you are," cried Mr. Wonka, slapping Violet hard on the back. "It's a stick of gum. It's a stick of the most amazing and fabulous and sensational gum in the world." Now, that seemed like a pretty short chapter, but this next chapter is super duper duper long, so I think I'm just going to read maybe 2 pages, and then we'll stop and start up again tomorrow. Chapter 21 is called Goodbye, Violet. "This gum," Mr. Wonka went on, "is my latest, my greatest, my most fascinating invention. It's a chewing gum meal. It's that tiny little strip of gum lying there is a whole 3-course dinner all by itself." "What sort of nonsense is this?" said one of the fathers. "My dear sir," cried Mr. Wonka, "when I start selling this gum in all the shops, it will change everything. It will be the end of all kitchens and all cooking. There will be no more marketing to do, no more buying of meat and groceries. There will be no knives and forks at mealtimes, no plates, no washing up, no garbage, no mess. Just a little strip of Wonka's magic chewing gum, and that's all you'll ever need at breakfast, lunch, and supper. This piece of gum I've just made happens to be tomato soup, roast beef, and blueberry pie, but you can have almost anything that you want. I'm going to stop for a minute. Would you rather be able to keep eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner like you're used to? Or would you rather have your meals in a stick of chewing gum? Tell somebody next to you. Or if no one's around, just tell yourself. All right, let's get back to reading. What do you mean? It's tomato soup, roast beef, and blueberry pie? Said Violet Beauregard. Well, if you were to start chewing it, said Mr. Wonka, then that is exactly what you would get on the menu. It's absolutely amazing. You can actually feel the food going down your throat and into your tummy. And you can taste it perfectly, and it fills you up. It satisfies you. It's terrific. It's utterly impossible, said Veruca Salt. Just so long as it's gum, shouted Violet Beauregard. Just so long as it's a piece of gum and I can chew it, then that's for me. And quickly she took out her own world record piece of chewing gum from her mouth and stuck it behind her left ear. Come on, Mr. Wonka, she said. Hand over this magic gum of yours and we'll see if the thing works. Now, Violet, said Mrs. Beauregard, her mother, don't let's do anything silly, Violet. I want the gum, said Violet. What's so silly about that? I would rather you didn't take it, Mr. Wonka told her gently. You see, I haven't got it quite right yet. There are still one or two things. Oh, to heck with that, said Violet, and suddenly, before Mr. Wonka could stop her, she shot out her hand and grabbed the stick of gum from the little drawer and popped it into her mouth. At once, her well-trained jaws started chewing away on it like a pair of tongues. Don't, said Mr. Wonka. Fabulous, shouted Violet. It's tomato soup. It's hot and creamy and delicious, and I can feel it running down my throat. Stop, said Mr. Wonka. The gum isn't ready yet. It's not right. Of course it's right, said Violet. It's working beautifully. Oh my, what lovely soup this is. Spit it out, said Mr. Wonka. It's changing, shouted Violet, chewing and grinning both at the same time. The second course is coming up. It's roast beef. It's tender and juicy, and boy, what a flavor. The baked potato is marvelous, too. It's got a crispy skin, and it's all filled with butter inside. But how interesting, Violet, said Mrs. Beauregard. You are a clever girl. Keep chewing, kiddo, said Mr. Beauregard. Keep right on chewing, baby. This is a great day for the Beauregards. Our little girl is the first person in the world to have a gum-chewing meal. Everybody was watching Violet Beauregard as she stood there chewing this extraordinary gum. Little Charlie Bucket was staring at her absolutely spellbound, watching her lips as they pressed and unpressed with the chewing, and Grandpa Joe stood beside her, gaping at the girl. Mr. Wonka was wringing his hands and saying, No, 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 no! It isn't ready for eating. It isn't right. You mustn't do it. Blueberry pie and cream, shouted Violet. Here it comes. Oh my, it's perfect. It's beautiful. It's exactly as though I'm swallowing it. It's as though I'm chewing and swallowing great big spoonfuls of the most marvelous blueberry pie in the world. Good heavens, girl! Shrieked Mrs. Beauregard suddenly, staring at Violet. What's happening to your nose? Oh, be quiet, Mother, and let me finish, said Violet. It's turning blue, screamed Mrs. Beauregard. Your nose is turning blue as a blueberry. Your mother is right, shouted Mr. Beauregard. Your whole nose has gone purple. What do you mean? Said Violet, still chewing away. Your cheeks, screamed Mrs. Beauregard. They're turning blue as well. So is your chin. Your whole face is turning blue. Spit out the gum at once, ordered Mr. Beauregard. And that is where we will stop. We will finish up this chapter tomorrow. In the meantime, be thinking, what's going to happen to Violet Beauregard? She's turning blue, just like a blueberry. Tune in tomorrow and we will see. Goodbye. Have a great afternoon, kids. See you later.